Liberal Democrats are choosing a successor to Nick Clegg as leader, and it's the turn of the northeast of England region to be hosting a hustings event, and it's happening here at the Royal Station Hotel in Newcastle. Well, one of the leadership candidates is Tim Farron. So, Tim, I want 1 minute from you as to why members in the North East should vote for you.
Because nothing matters more in this election than making sure that we get out of the wilderness that the electorate sends us into. And I guess the question really everybody needs to ask, and I need to ask all the members in the North East, is, do you want to win? And if you want to win, I am your man. The reality is that we've had an absolute hammering in the elections in May, and yet the response of people around the country, the 17,000 new members, show that there are many people out there who are Liberals at heart and will become Liberal Democrats in practice. Our job is to rebuild from the grassroots up in places like Newcastle, Gateshead, Berwick, and all those places, so that we can get back onto the front foot. We need to give people a message of who we are, so that when we call for people to vote next time round, people think that's the party for me. We've got a track record in government on whether it be pupil premium, mental health, on supporting business in the North East. That all counts for nothing if we can't win again. We've changed no one's life from second place.
Right, that's your minute up. Tim, good luck.
Thank you.
I'm now joined by Norman Lamb. Norman, I want 1 minute from you as to why members in the North East should vote for you.
Well, look, all the way through my adult life, I've fought for Liberal values, and I think I've won on Liberal values on all sorts of things. So, winning compensation for 5,500 women unlawfully discharged from the armed forces, taking on Tony Blair and winning a landmark case on freedom of information, taking on the arms trade in the developing world to ensure that we expose outrageous sales of arms to the poorest countries in the world, and campaigning as a minister for equality for those who suffer from mental ill health. So I have a track record, and I think I've demonstrated that I could reach out and win people over beyond our party to the cause. And this is a Liberal age, and I want us to be really ambitious and to convince all those people who share our values that we are the party that represents them. And I think if we do that, we can build a liberal, progressive and radical movement of change. And I feel through my record I've demonstrated that I can do that.
Norman, that's your minute up.
Brilliant. Good. Thank you very much. Good to see you.
This is the point at which I send one of them out again, because the rule is that the candidates are not in the room when the other one is speaking. We tossed a coin earlier on, and Norman Lamb will be speaking first for 10 minutes or just a bit more, I think is what we've been agreed. So Tim, if you could leave us, please.
Well, hello all of you. It's fantastic to see quite so many Liberal Democrats in one room. I should say first of all that I'm very relieved that this is a microphone that I will leave behind when I leave the room, because in London on Wednesday night at the end of a hustings, well no, at the start of the hustings, with 1,000 people in the room, I went out after doing my speech and said to the person outside the auditorium, "Where's the loo?" Only to discover that the entire auditorium had heard me asking where the loo was, so that wasn't a very good start. And I also just say that I believe in leading from the front, and as an ex-health minister I want to demonstrate my commitment to healthy living, so I have my can of Red Bull in front of me here. Can I start by also just acknowledging the extraordinary efforts of Julie and Josh in the two seats here. bruising trauma for this party, and those people who stepped up to the plate and who fought the election on behalf of this party deserve our enormous thanks and appreciation. So thank you to both of you. So we have a leadership election now, and you have to decide who you're going to vote for. Let me just start by saying that I can confidently predict that this particular election will be won by a Liberal Democrat. I think it should encourage us all, but it will be the first of very many that will happen. So why am I standing? Well, it's about my values, what I stand for, and my absolute determination to make a difference to people's lives. That ultimately is what we're all trying to do. Why we devote so much of our energies to this cause. It's to ensure that people have a chance of a better life based on the values that we hold. And as you think about who you will support in this election, I need to tell you something about the values that I hold dear, what motivates me as an individual. I need to tell you what my ambition is for the party, and I also need to tell you how we achieve that ambition. So first of all, something about me. I've tried throughout my adult life to fight for liberal values, for the things that I believe in. So long before I was ever elected to Parliament, I took on the MOD as a lawyer on behalf of 5,500 women who'd been discharged from the armed forces simply because they got pregnant. The armed forces were breaching the European Equal Treatment Directive, and they had acted unlawfully. We took on the MOD. I was chair of the National Coordinating Group who acted on behalf of 5,500 women, and we secured compensation against the MOD. The Daily Mail, as you might imagine, didn't like it particularly, but we did it, and we secured a victory. As a new Member of Parliament, I took on Tony Blair in the period around the Iraq War over freedom of information. I wanted to know who he had been meeting before the Iraq War, who had been influencing him. So I asked the question, and I was refused an answer. So I challenged him, and after a long battle, we established the principle, which still exists, that all of us as citizens have the right to know who our Prime Minister and our ministers meet with, who are influencing them in the decisions that they reach. I have to say to you that when I became a minister myself and I was told I have to complete the details of everyone I meet, I thought to myself, oh, I was responsible for that. But we have to live by the rules that we believe in. And then I took on BAE Systems and the arms trade over really outrageous corruption in the sale of arms to the developing world. Tanzania in particular, one of the poorest countries in the world. The Blair government signed an export license authorising that sale. I exposed the outrageous corruption involved in that case. Tanzania ended up getting compensation for the loss that they'd suffered because of corrupt individuals being bribed by that company. But it's taking on these liberal values, and then as a campaigning minister, fighting the cause of equality for those who suffer from mental ill health. How can it be right that if you have suspected cancer, you have a right to an appointment with a specialist within 2 weeks, and rightly so. But if you're a youngster, a teenager, who suffers a first episode of psychosis, you had no such right. And yet we know that that can massively change that person's life chances. If you neglect it, that individual is likely to have a life on benefits, a life with difficult relationships, a miserable life. If you can act quickly, then you can change that person's life. We introduced the first ever waiting time standards in mental health, particularly for those youngsters experiencing the first ever episode of psychosis from April this year, something that I'm incredibly proud of. But as a minister, I came across so many cases of people who were treated as second-class citizens, who were neglected, families who said to me, we're unhappy with our son being shoved away in an institution hundreds of miles away from home, but no one is listening to us. No one is taking us seriously. And I can't stand by and let that happen. As a Liberal, I believe you have to fight for people who are ignored by the system so that every individual is treated fairly, treated equally. And we came up with new proposals in a green paper just before the election to give people new rights to challenge decisions and to have control over the money that is spent on their care. Now, I will hold the Tories to account for implementing those new rights. But this is what I'm about as a Liberal, fighting for individuals, powerful citizens against the state. And that's incidentally why we will absolutely defend to the very end the Human Rights Act, because this is about the powerful citizen against the overbearing state. We must be on the side of that citizen at every turn. But along with the idea of powerful citizens, we should always celebrate diversity. We should always reject conformity, enable people to live the life that they want to lead without interference from the state. This is at the heart of what it is to be a Liberal. We must always be intolerant of injustice, of entrenched poverty, and of discrimination, and we must fight it wherever we see it. And there is the fundamental principle that every child in our country must have the chance to make the very most of their talents as an individual, to flourish as an individual. And it's a scandal of our time that still so many children's futures are determined by the circumstances of their birth. And that's why the pupil premium, which we implemented in government, which is changing children's lives, £2.5 billion targeted at the children from the poorest backgrounds. It's making a difference to individuals' lives, giving them the chance to make the very most of their talents. And we should be very proud of that. But then along with all of that, along with the idea that citizens must be free, comes responsibilities. So we have responsibilities to one another in our communities. We have responsibility for the proper stewardship of our planet and for future generations. This is what it is to be a Liberal. And I will always defend these absolutely essential principles. So, what is my ambition for this party? Well, we live in a world that has completely changed. Change happens so rapidly now. Think of the world of commerce, where you have household names on the high street that are here one day, gone the next. You have new startups which suddenly catch fire and capture people's imagination and can grow very rapidly. I want us to think of ourselves as a new startup, a dynamic startup, with a potentially massive market out there. Why? Because in my view, this is a Liberal age. There are so many people out there who share our values, but who don't necessarily identify themselves with the Liberal Democrats. Our task must be to ensure that those people see that we are the party that will fight for their values. And I want us to think big. I want us to feel that we are at the start of something which could be really exciting. Let's build a liberal, progressive, radical movement of change to connect with all of those people in our country who share our values. So what are the steps that we need to take to get there? Well, first of all, I think we need root and branch reform of the way that our party operates. It's too complicated. There are committees all over the place that no one really understands. We don't always behave towards our members in the way that Liberals should. We are not a diverse party. We are the least diverse party in British politics. That should shame us all and should make us determined to change it. And so we need to ensure that the way our party operates is always in accordance with our Liberal values. Secondly, we need to again become a really effective election-winning machine. We used to be out there in front, but we've fallen behind on the curve. There are other parties now that have taken the lead, and we need to get back in front, again applying our Liberal values, applying the principle of community politics, giving power to people. We used to do it brilliantly, and many people still do. I was hearing from the councillors in Gateshead who have survived brilliantly despite the challenges of being in government. There are many people still doing it, but as a party, we need to rediscover the zeal for community politics, giving real power to people. Third, I want our party to become again an intellectual powerhouse. If you think back to the 60s, Joe Grimmond, those of you who are old enough to remember that great leader, Joe Grimmond brought in the great thinkers from outside the party. He wanted to define what it was to be a liberal in that era. And he got this exciting idea of new things coming forward, new liberal solutions to the big challenges of that time. We need to start that engine going again. We need to win the battle of ideas. Liberal solutions to the massive challenges that we face in this century. And if you can combine a winning of the battle of ideas with intellectual force, together with really effective campaigning, then we could be really powerful again. And then finally, we need to reach out to young people. Our party will have a very bright future if we can inspire a new generation of young people. Just as in the 60s, 2,000 people attending young liberal conferences, including on Yarmouth Pier, I seem to remember, in my own part of the world. We need to inspire that new generation of young people, being open, international, dynamic, focusing on opportunity, on aspiration, yes. Young people want to get on, they want to succeed in life, but also being prepared to make the case for reform of our archaic drug laws that criminalise so many young people outrageously and put billions of pounds into the hands of criminal networks across our world. That is an outrageous failure of public policy. We need to lead the case for combating climate change. We need to come up with liberal solutions to our housing crisis. We need to radically reform the way our prisons work so that we stop incarcerating so many people who suffer from mental ill health and learning disability. That, again, is a scandal of our time. If we speak to the values of young people in this way, we can inspire them to join our cause. So let me just end by saying this to you. Recently I was speaking to a young Liberal youth member, student, and she said to me in relation to my work on mental health, "You've restored my faith in politics." And that meant a lot to me, hearing that it had actually had an effect on how she felt about politicians. But we can restore the people's faith in politics by telling it as it is, by speaking again to our heart, to our values. We can convince those people that politics is a noble calling and that we can really make a difference to people's lives and that we can build that movement built on conscience, built on principle, a liberal, progressive, radical movement of change. Together we can succeed. And if you share my ambition to get this party into government in our own right, as that force of liberalism, then do think about supporting me in this election. Thank you very much indeed.
Well, thanks, Nigel. So what makes a great speech? A great speech is a speech that moves people from one place to another, that changes minds, that persuades. And on the morning of the 8th of May, I heard a truly great speech from the lips of Nick Clegg. That speech in the morning of that defeat, that dark morning, spoke about the value of liberalism, the importance of liberalism, the essential nature of it and the threat that it faces. And we reflect that over this last 5 years, thanks to us, thanks to you, £2 billion has funneled through the pupil premium into the very schools that Tories do not send their children to. £8 billion sent into green energy against a fight with those Tories who believe all that is green crap. And you know what? The thing that gets least attention of all is the fact that Nick Clegg single-handedly went in there and expended vast amounts of political personal capital to end the detention of the children of asylum seekers. 5,000 kids who will never know who it was who liberated them, a move that won Nick Clegg not a single vote. That is the measure of the integrity of the man who I am still proud to call my leader. I'm guessing not that much a different audience to previous ones, so let's do the audience participation that I'm sure Norman's already done. Hands up, new members. Come on. Awesome. Absolutely awesome. Thank you. Now, you come here to find out what you can do for the Liberal Democrats, and don't worry, we're going to tell you. But I want you to know what a massive difference you have made. This party devastated from 56 MPs down to 8, the worst election result since I was 2 weeks old. I went into HQ on the Tuesday after polling day to put what I expected to be an arm around broken and demoralised people. I found no broken and demoralised people. I found inspired and enthused people, enthused by every one of you who has joined since, and the 17,000 like you. I am dead proud of you. Now, but on the 7th of May, this party was ejected into the wilderness by the British electorate. And the only thing that matters in this leadership election is how do we get out of it. The only thing. So I'm going to make a prediction tonight. You will see 2 real Liberals, 2 Liberal Democrats, who will agree with each other on 99% of policies. And I'm guessing you will agree with us on 99% of policies. And here's the tragedy. We can do nothing about them. Because for the last few years we have been losing elections. Forgive me for being impertinent, because the job tonight is for you to ask me questions. I have one question for you. Do you want to win? Do you want to win? Yes. Because if you want to win, I am your man. Because I am not having the party of Gladstone, Lloyd George or Grimmond die on my watch. It's not just for the love of the party that I want to do this. Other things drive me. And if you want to know what drives me, I have to take you back to my childhood. I grew up in the deep south, Lancashire. Some of you will know that I was brought up by a single mum, me and my little sister, and we were brought up in some level of poverty. Half the kids in my class, me included, our parents are out of work from time to time, if not most of the time. And the measure, as many of you will know, of a good parent is that you don't discover that you're in poverty until many years later. And I remember washing up with my mother after my grandmother's funeral, and we were just talking about the fact that my grandmother and my great-grandmother's wedding ring had been melted together. I just said, Mum, whatever happened to your wedding ring? She said, I pawned it when you were 7 to feed you. It makes you think. It makes you think. And it makes me think about all the people I went to school with and grew up with. And how did I end up going to the best university on the planet here in this city? How did I do that? Thank you. Sorry, Durham chaps. How did I do that? Because I was fortunate enough to have a bloody-minded parent who never knew when she was beaten. And no surprise I ended up as a Liberal Democrat, eh? And the thing is, you shouldn't have to have that. So my reflection on my childhood, it was massively happy, my childhood, don't get me wrong. My reflection on inequality is what a waste. I look at all those people I grew up with and I think, what a waste of wonderful people and talent. And that is inequality the country over. You see, in this country, if you are female, you will earn less than you are if you are male. If you are white, you will earn more than if you are not white. If you are LGBT+, you will have fewer chances than if you are not. If you come from the north of England, let's be blunt, you will have fewer opportunities than if you come from London and the south east. Inequality is not just utterly immoral, it is completely stupid. If you owned a company and you only made use of 20% of your people and 20% of your space, you would be an idiot and you would fail. And that is Britain. And I'm not having that. Now, we need to remember also that it's not just that we are against inequality, we are for equality. And I've heard too much of us, I'm afraid, in recent times, telling everybody what we're against and not enough about what we are for. I want people not to just know what we will do. I want us to know who we are. That matters massively. I want people to identify with us. So we are the kind of people who are outward-looking, generous-spirited, internationalist, anti-nationalist. Therefore, we will lead the campaign for the UK to stay in the European Union. Where I want us to be, the kind of people who care not just about today but about tomorrow, not just about you but about your children and their children. That is why we will lead the fight against the existential threat that is climate change. And where I want us to be, the kind of people to see us as the kind of people who know that nothing robs you of your freedom and your liberty more than poverty and poor housing. Therefore, we will be the people who lead the fight against David Cameron's outrageous sale of housing association homes in this country. Things together, who are we? We are the people who expect the best out of people and plan for the best out of people, not the worst out of people. You see, I think we fought an election where people did not know who we are. If you elect me as your leader, Britain will know who we are, and Britain will like it. So look, I look at our situation now. I have ambition for my country, I've got ambition first for my party. And you know, at least many of you know, that this is not the first near-death experience that this party has endured. Under Grimond, under Steele, under Ashdown, we've fought back and we've recovered, and we should be proud of that. But we should be reminded that that has never happened by accident. All of our revivals and our recoveries have happened by design and by plan. And as you look at the threat to our traditional British liberties, you look at the 12 billion to be taken out of welfare, the attack on housing association homes, the attack on the Human Rights Act, on the Snoopers Charter, you realise that never has it been more important that we have a liberal voice in this country, a strong liberal party in this country. Never has our survival been more essential. But let me tell you this, our survival might be essential, it is not inevitable. We will have to have a plan, and we will have to work our way out of this pickle. It is not enough just to want the Liberal Democrats to survive and thrive. We have to make it so. So why me? Well, look, bluntly, I am the only Liberal Democrat candidate in the United Kingdom who got more than 50% of the vote on May the 7th. Last May, the only place in the whole of Britain which got the Liberal Democrats come first in those disappointing European elections was the Liberal Democrats in Westmoreland. The only place in those dreadful, dismal, utterly appalling police commissioner elections 3.5 years ago that came first was Westmoreland and Lonsdale, and none of that happened by accident. It is because I and my team have built a team, and you inspire a team, you fuel it by inspiration, emotion and desire and a will to win because of what you can do at the end of it. A team of 2,000 volunteers in one constituency. I want to do that everywhere, because when that tsunami came on May the 7th, the Everest of Westmoreland was well clear of the waters. I want all of you well clear of the waters. So as we think about a new leader, I hope you won't mind me spending a moment reflecting on our fallen leader, Charles, whose memorial service yesterday was in the Bute Hall at Glasgow University that Norman and I and others were at. Charles Kennedy was a great man and a great politician. And I want to just sum up why I think he was a truly great politician and a great leader. First, he was human. He spoke to people with authenticity. Those people, and there are one or two in this room, who tried to put Charles Kennedy on message were massively, totally and utterly disappointed. Because Charles Kennedy was always on message, it was just his message. And it came from here. And when people heard him, they trusted him, because they knew they were not being spun anything by him. So he was human. Secondly, he was principled. Don't ever get lulled into the thought, looking back from 12 years hence, that opposition to the Iraq War was the easy, oppositionalist, populist thing to do. No, it was not. He was bayed and heckled and shouted down by Labour and Tory alike in that House of Commons for being a traitor. He was yelled at as being Charlie Chamberlain by the Tory front bench. On the front page of the Murdoch press the day afterwards, a picture of Kennedy's face, superimposed on a rattlesnake, the treacherous Charles Kennedy, the enemy of our troops. That's what he had to face, and he stood up to it. He stood up to it and he led the proud campaign against the immoral and illegal Iraq War, and we should all be dead proud of him today for that. So, human, principled, effective. Don't forget, this was the man who led us to the largest number of MPs we have had since Lloyd George's day, and I have to say, the man who led us during the glorious night that we took control of Newcastle City Council in 2000. By the way, that is on my hit list, should I become leader. You are getting control of this city again, or else. Human, principled, effective, and I just want to suggest this to you. Those three things are connected. I want Kennedy is the proof that the good guys can win. We have just gone through an election, and you've got to admire these people, where Salmond and Sturgeon and Cameron and Osborne won by being ruthlessly effective with the politics of fear, by working the politics of the emotion and the gut. There is nothing wrong with the politics of the emotion and the gut. You've just got to make sure it's not for fear, but for hope. And Charles Kennedy proves to me that the good guys can be effective, the good guys can win. Why should only the bad guys be ruthless and get results? I want us to be that party, those people. So look, we don't just need one leader. We need 62,000 leaders if we are to emerge out of the mess that we have found ourselves in after 5 years in government. I absolutely believe that we have been gathered together for such a time as this. And I am utterly confident that if we work together, we will build ourselves back to the Liberal Party that Britain desperately needs, the Liberal force that Britain desperately needs. If you elect me leader, your feet will hurt through all the leaflets that you have to deliver. If you elect me leader, your bank balances will hurt from the money that you donate that you cannot afford. If you elect me leader, your shoulders will hurt from all the state buds you whack up that you didn't want to do. And if you elect me leader, your faces will ache with the mile-wide grin, because we are going to win again.
So that's it. Candidates have now spoken. The meeting is now closed. Ballot papers will go out to members towards the end of June. They need to be returned by 15th of July, and after that we will have a new leader.